Right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's live cooking demonstration. My name is Ryan Smith. I'm the Wellness Program Administrator with Employee Development and Wellness Services at Georgia State University. By trade, I am a registered dietitian, so I am really excited to be cooking with you today. Before we get started, though, I did want to go over just a couple quick ground rules. We're using the WebEx platform, and we are going to be recording today's session. So after today's session, if you want to view it again and cook alongside me or share it with a colleague who may not have been able to attend today, we'll be sure to send out a link to that recording. Additionally, we'll be making use of the chat feature on WebEx. During today's presentation, if you've got any questions, comments, ideas for a way to kind of customize the recipe, we'd love to hear it. So please put all questions and comments in the chat feature, and at the end of today's presentation, we'll be sure to go over all of those. With all that being said, we will go ahead and get started with today's recipe. We're going to be making the recipe title is kale salad with spiced chickpeas and tofu. We will actually not be using kale today. Some of you may be aware that recently there was a food recall for kale from certain grocery stores, one of which was Kroger, which is where I typically shop. Now, food recalls happen all the time. It's a preventative measure often taken to just make sure that people aren't getting sick if they find out that any food was contaminated. Now, recently, there was reports about some kale being contaminated, so Kroger preemptively decided to pull these off of shelves and refund anyone who may have already purchased it. So we're just going to be switching greens today. The recipe still works really well. I'm actually going to be making use of a baby spring mix, which just has a couple different varieties of greens in it. Really, you can make this with whatever you wanted. If you wanted to do spinach, if you wanted to do green leaf lettuce, romaine, kale, entirely up to you. So we'll just be making that one swap today. And I encourage you to use whatever green you might already have on hand or whatever your favorite may be. So what I have done in advance is I have gone ahead and pressed the tofu. Since we are making use of tofu today, I'll kind of talk through a few talking points about it. I know that tofu is a food that not everyone's very familiar with. So tofu is made from soybeans, and it comes in a little carton like this. You'll find it in the refrigerated section. If you have a grocery store that has a plant-based section, you'll find it there, or like a health food section. It's usually there in the refrigerated section. And tofu, again, made from soybeans, really, really high in protein. So if you're looking for a plant-powered protein, maybe you're doing like a meatless Monday, or you eat a plant-based diet, tofu is a great option for that. So we're making use of that, but tofu by itself doesn't really taste like anything. It comes in some liquid. It's kind of like a spongy texture with no flavor whatsoever. But the beauty of it is that whatever we add to it, whether it's seasonings, sauces, things like that, it soaks it up and holds all that flavor. But first, we've got to get rid of the liquid that it's in, and that's why we press it. So let me show you what this looks like. I've got a can of beans here on top of it, and that's just used to weigh it down a little bit. And a skillet, that we're not using a skillet for cooking, again, just some flat surface to apply some weight and pressure to that. Let me get that out of the way. And then I've lined the top of the tofu with a couple layers of paper towels. So what we've done is we've pressed down on it. I usually do this for about 20 minutes before I cook it. The longer you do it, the more liquid you get out, which will help make the tofu more flavorful when it has more seasoning and sauce that it can absorb later. So the tofu comes in a big block. I slice them into 3 little slabs like this. That way I can lay them flat and press down on it. So let's go ahead and just pick these pieces up and get these towels out of the way. I typically do paper towels in direct contact with the tofu, and then like a dish towel or kitchen towel at the base of it. And when I send out the recipe, if you've never used tofu before, it will include a link for some more instructions on how to go about pressing tofu. Again, if you're a first timer, it can be a little intimidating. A lot of people's first experience with tofu is not a good one because they don't press it properly, which means the tofu doesn't end up tasting that great. But if you work with it, you get a lot of good flavor out of it. So now I've got these slabs. I'm just going to cut this into 1-inch cubes. And really, when you're working with tofu, you can cut the cubes into any size you want. Maybe you want a smaller, finer dice. It's up to you, but 1-inch cubes works well for this recipe. I kind of like them to be just little chunks that I can bite into whenever I am eating it. Now I'm going to turn it 90 degrees. We've got all these vertical strips here that look like that. And we're just going to do a couple more cuts going the other direction to complete that cubing process here. So like I said, I pressed this for about 20 minutes before the cooking demo started to make sure that I got all that liquid out of there. And now the tofu is primed and ready to pick up the flavor from the seasoning that we'll be using. So we've got our tofu cubes there. They are all set. The other ingredient we'll be using to add a big punch of protein to this recipe is going to be chickpeas or garbanzo beans. We've worked with these before. We've made hummus with them. We've made falafel, all sorts of great applications for this. Garbanzo beans or chickpeas, again, it's actually the same thing, just two different names for it. We're going to use 1 can and we're going to rinse and drain them. I've got that prepared here. Now, chickpeas are great because in addition to being a plant-based source of protein, they are also a very healthy carbohydrate. So they are a mix of protein for muscle building and tissue repair, as well as some kind of longer lasting energy, and then carbohydrates to give us some energy up front. They've got dietary fiber in them, which helps maintain a healthy cholesterol, healthy blood sugar, and just keeps us regular. So a lot of good nutrition packed into chickpeas, and we get that bonus of the protein. So by using the chickpeas and the tofu together, I'm just going to put them into the bowl here. And you'll just want a large bowl that will comfortably fit the chickpeas and the tofu. And right now, if you're cooking at home, this is a good time to preheat your oven. You're going to want to preheat it to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can preheat your oven and we will continue working with this tofu mixture here. Now, like I mentioned, tofu by itself, not a lot of flavor, but we're going to fix that by making our own dressing and seasoning combination here. So what I've got is in a medium-sized bowl, I've got a 1/4 cup of olive oil. You can use any vegetable oil of your choice, but olive oil adds a nice flavor to this, so that's the one that I went with. So a 1/4 cup of olive oil in a medium bowl here, and we're going to add a 1/4 cup of lemon juice to it. Now, combining an acid with an oil or a fat like this is a pretty standard way to make a dressing. Sometimes it's like a vinaigrette that you're making with vinegar and an oil. We're just doing lemon juice and an oil, but we're going to give it a little more flavor with some different seasonings. We're going to make use of 3 teaspoons of paprika. We are not using smoked paprika. I want to kind of note the difference between the two. Smoked paprika, in my opinion, is a lot stronger. It's a lot more potent. It's got that smoky flavor to it, which can be really pleasant, but it can be a little overpowering in some recipes. So this is just regular paprika, 3 teaspoons. We're also going to use 3 teaspoons of cumin. We'll make use of 2 teaspoons of garlic powder. And I say garlic powder, not garlic salt. So the difference there is garlic salt in your spice cabinet it's a mixture of salt and garlic powder, so it adds more sodium to the dish, which we don't need because we're going to add salt on our own. So just 2 teaspoons of garlic powder. We'll do 1 teaspoon of ground black pepper. And then to give it a little more flavor, we are going to make use of salt, but we don't want to overdo it. So we'll be using 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. So we've got that mixed in here. Now what we're going to do is, if you want to use a whisk, you can, or just a spoon works fine. We're just going to mix it all together. So make sure that the oil and the lemon juice incorporate together. We want to make sure that that paprika and everything is getting mixed in nicely. And this will make a really interesting dressing and sauce. I've never had anything that tastes quite like it. I don't cook with paprika that frequently, but this dish makes really good use of it. So you'll mix that around. All right. And once you feel like you've got it mixed thoroughly, what we're going to do is we're actually going to divide this into 2 portions. So let me show you a little closer view of what that sauce or that dressing looks like. We're going to divide it into 2 portions because half is going to go onto our tofu and our chickpeas right away. And then the other half we're going to save to top the salad with directly. So I'm just going to make use of this container. You can measure it. I'm just going to eyeball it. And like I said, we're going for about 50% in each dish. Okay. So we'll set that over to the side and save it for the salad. Now with this half, we will go ahead and pour it on top of the tofu and the chickpeas. Right. Now this is where the tofu does its magic. It's going to soak up all that flavor. I'm just going to stir it around here. And my goal, the paprika and the cumin give this a nice dark kind of auburn brown color. My goal is for the tofu to not look super bright white at the end of this. We're going to mix it around until each piece of tofu, every side has a nice light coating of that sauce and that seasoning. That way, no matter when you bite into it, you're going to get a good bit of flavor after it's done cooking. Same thing with the chickpeas. They're going to pick up all this flavor, the garlic, the pepper, the salt, the paprika, and the cumin, and it'll make it a really pleasant experience. So once you feel pretty good about having mixed it around, you can tell, inspect, okay, yeah, that tofu's got lots of seasoning on it. It's good to go. You will want to get a baking sheet, and you can go ahead and just spray it with cooking spray, or if you don't have cooking spray, you can drizzle a little bit of oil on there and spread it around with either a paper towel, or if you've got an oil brush, that works great too. So I'm just going to drizzle a little bit. We just don't want this to stick to the baking sheet. And if you haven't used an oil brush before, they're great. They just move oil around easily. So I'm just kind of painting up and down the baking sheet to make sure that the oil is spread evenly so nothing's going to burn or stick to the bottom of the pan. Chickpeas have a tendency in the oven, they can burn pretty easily since they are so small. So having a nice coating of oil prevents them from sticking and reduces the chance of them burning and smoking. So we've got that prepared. Now what you'll want to do is spread this out on the baking sheet into a single flat layer. And the reason we want to make it a flat layer is so that everything can cook evenly. If things are stacked on top of each other, it makes it harder for them to cook. So this helps out with that process. And if you've got any extra sauce left over in the bowl, I encourage you to scoop it onto the sheet, get a little more flavor in there. So I'm just using the spoon, spreading this out as much as possible. If you can have the tofu laying flat against the baking sheet instead of standing up straight, that is ideal. Because what we want to do is the tofu, here, let me actually show you if you're not super familiar with it. The tofu is very squishy and spongy. And what we're going to do through cooking it is we're going to make it crispy. My favorite way to have tofu is when it's been baked or cooked well and it's got this nice crispy edge to it, almost like a chicken nugget, if you can imagine that texture, that crispiness. That's what we're going for, and having these flat against the pan is going to help with that. So with that spread out and ready to go, what you'll do at home is with your oven preheated to 450 degrees, you will slide that into the bottom third of your oven if you want to put a rack on that bottom third position, and you'll bake it for about 20 minutes or until the chickpeas and the tofu start to turn a golden brown. I'll show you exactly what that looks like here in just a moment. So for the sake of the demonstration, we will now pretend that I have put this into the oven, and I'll cook it again in real time after the demonstration is over. I don't want to make you wait 20 minutes for that. So I went ahead and pre-cooked some. But before we get into that and I show you the reveal of the tofu and the chickpeas, let's prepare our salad and the rest of the vegetables. Bear with me just a moment as I move some of these dishes out of the way. All right. So we're going to be making use of an English cucumber, an orange bell pepper, and then the greens that I mentioned earlier. Now with the bell pepper, my strategy for cutting it, I've gone ahead and rinsed it and washed it, is I cut the top off of it like so. And then I cut the bottom part off, imagining that I'm taking like the lid off the top and the bottom of it there. And the reason I do that, I'll show you here in just a minute. We now have this kind of little tube of the bell pepper. This makes it easy to pull out the core there where all the seeds are. So I'll take my knife and just cut those connection points real quick. Shouldn't take too much force. They're not that strongly connected. And then you can just pull that piece right on out of there, and we'll just set it over here to the side. The next thing I'm going to do is cut this tube in half. And the goal here when I cut any vegetable or any fruit is to try to make it level if I can. That means it's not going to rock around and it'll be easier to cut. So now you can see how I could fold this out into a flat strip, which will make cutting it into strips like I want a lot easier. So we're just going to do some vertical strips for this. If you want to dice it or cube it, you can. I'm just going to keep it simple with these strips. That's kind of how the recipe likes to handle it. So we'll go through and cut. Now, bell peppers are a great source of nutrition. We're getting some nice vitamin C from them. We're getting fiber from them. Lots of other good things in there. For the tops and the bottoms, you can go back and just cut these up by hand. They're not going to be as perfect in terms of the strip size because they're a little irregular in shape, but that is quite all right. They're still going to be great in the recipe. And for the top, I just cut around where the stem would come out of. I'm just sticking to those bright orange pieces. We don't need that white part. Okay, and then we'll do a couple more cuts here. All right, so our bell pepper is all chopped up and good to go. We will now chop up the cucumber. The recipe actually only calls for half of a cucumber. That is entirely up to you how much you want to use. For me, I prefer to not have just half a cucumber hanging out in the refrigerator. So I'm going to go ahead and put the whole thing in. I do enjoy cucumber, so no problem there on my part in terms of getting to eat twice as much for the salad. Now, in terms of nutrition for the cucumber, like a lot of vegetables, has a lot of benefits in the fact that it's just got fiber in it. As I mentioned earlier, fiber has a lot of health benefits on the body. It can help with our satiation, so how full and satisfied we feel after a meal. I mentioned it helps with cholesterol and blood sugar control, keeping us regular. Cucumber also has a lot of water content in it and can be helpful for hydration because while drinking water is very important, we can still get hydration from food that has water in it. So fruits and vegetables, especially watery ones like cucumbers, are a great way to do that. Now let me reach over here and I've got the baby spring mix. And what I'm going to do is just for convenience sake, because there's going to be quite a few leftovers from this, it makes several servings. I'm going to go ahead and build the salad inside of a little Tupperware container. That's just going to make it easier for me. So what we'll do is we're going to want about 5 cups of whatever your preferred green is. It can be kale, it can be the baby spring mix, whatever you prefer. We'll do 5 cups of it. I'm just going to kind of eyeball this for the sake of time, so we'll just scoop that up and put it in. A portion control thing that you can do if you are ever trying to estimate serving size and you don't have measuring cups on you is, for most people, if you ball up your fist like this, that's about the size of 1 cup. There are a lot of different hand measurement tricks out there that you can do about like the size of teaspoons and tablespoons using your fingers and your palm and such like that. So whenever you don't have measuring cups and you're still trying to portion control, using little things like that can be great. So what I did there was I kind of imagined, all right, 5 cups would be about 5 fists worth. So that's how I put that in there. Again, if you're trying to be more precise, you can certainly measure it out. And it's good to practice with portioning by using measuring cups until you get more comfortable with it. So we've got a nice bed of greens there. We are going to go ahead and put the bell pepper and cucumbers on top of it. And I have a tendency to do this with vegetables. I tend to overload whatever I'm eating with vegetables. I joked 2 weeks ago about when I make wraps, the wraps are always exploding because I've stuffed them with so much good stuff, so much nutrition. And I might be doing that again here today with this Tupperware container. Might have been better to go a size up, but we'll be all right. So we've got our salad there. And that half of the sauce that we reserved earlier, the paprika and the cumin and everything, we're going to go ahead and just pour that over the salad. And if you've got salad tongs or a spoon or something like that, this is a great time to use the tongs and just kind of toss the salad. So you can toss the salad like that, or if you don't want to do that and you're using a container like this, you can always put the lid on it and kind of just shake it around, and that'll distribute the dressing well too. It's good to turn it upside down so that the liquid is just kind of moving about. And this will give every leaf, every cucumber piece, every bell pepper slice a nice little bit of a coating so it'll have some flavor when we bite into it. But the bulk of the flavor for this recipe is going to come from those chickpeas and the tofu. So I went ahead and pre-cooked it. Let me grab those now. So again, you will have cooked it at home for about 20 minutes or until the tofu and chickpeas reach a golden brown texture, and I'll show you what that looks like. Running out of space here. Set this right here. And hopefully you can see what it looks like. I actually don't need the oven mitt because this is cooled a little bit. But it's got that nice brown, crispy texture on it. Very, very appetizing looking. Much improved in color from that bright white tofu we originally saw. Let me find a good, oh yeah. So I mentioned I wanted the tofu to get nice and crispy on the bottom. I said, imagine like a chicken nugget. That is exactly what we've achieved here. Same thing with the chickpeas. They've got a nice crispy brown coating to them. They're very hard now because they baked and cooked well. So this was exactly what we were going for. At this point, what you'll want to do is get your Tupperware container here or wherever you're building your salad in, and we'll just scoop this in. Now, for the sake of the video, I want to remind everyone, I cooked this in advance. a while ago. It had plenty of time to cool in the oven, so I'm handling it with my bare hands because this baking sheet is room temperature. If you are at home, please use an oven mitt. I do not want anyone getting hurt because of that. So where did I put my spoon? There we go. So we'll go ahead and just scoop all this in and top the salad with it. And then we'll give it one more good toss so that everything can get a little bit more of that dressing on it and that flavor. And if you have any chickpeas or pieces of tofu that might have stuck to the pan, it could be that there wasn't quite enough cooking spray on there. So that might be something to kind of take away. This one worked pretty well. They came off without too much of a fight. So we've got that in there. Again, I'm going to give it one more shake, let that sauce spread around and really coat everything. All right, and let me get a bowl. I want to plate it and show you what it looks like for a serving. Okay. So this is a pretty easy recipe. Most of the time it takes is actually just waiting on things in the oven, which we skipped today for the sake of the demonstration. But we'll get some greens, some cucumbers, some bell peppers in there, a nice little mix of everything. And then let's make sure we have some tofu pieces and some of those chickpeas showing off on top to look nice and tasty. So there is the kale and spiced tofu and chickpea salad. Again, any bed of greens works just fine. This is a recipe we actually made about a year ago when we first started doing the cooking demonstrations. I really, really enjoyed it and wanted to visit it again. There's something just so fresh about all the vegetables with this unique sauce on top of it. The chickpeas and the tofu come out very, very crispy and are really fun to bite into. It's just a nice mixture of things. Now, when you cook it, the chickpeas and the tofu will come out hot, and of course, your salad ingredients will be cold. If you are okay with those two temperatures working together, you can go ahead and eat it right then and there. If you're not, what I'd recommend doing is when you store your leftovers, you can just refrigerate everything. I find that that paprika seasoning seems to marinate a little bit in the refrigerator. So having these leftovers and serving the chickpea and the tofu cold with the salad is actually really pleasant too. So a little bit of flexibility there. In terms of time in the fridge, you can store this for about 3 to 4 days in an airtight container. That's a great opportunity for you to meal prep on a weekend and have most of your meals for the week taken care of if you wanted to bring it in for lunch, or if you're cooking for family or household roommates or members, you can go ahead and make a batch of this and you get several servings out of it to share with everyone. So all in all, a great recipe. When we send out a copy of the recipe card, it will include the nutrition information. You can take a look at the carbohydrate amount, the protein, the fiber, all that great nutrition that it's packing, and see how it might fit into your lifestyle and your daily diet. So I do see we've had some questions and comments in the chat. I'm going to take a moment to look at those and address those as well. Okay, well, here's someone just excited to get the recipe. So like I mentioned, we're going to be sending out a copy of that recipe along with the recording. So everyone will have the opportunity to make it. It is a very, very good one. I can vouch for that. Let me see here. Oh, great question. I should have clarified this. This question was about tofu, and it said that tofu comes in a variety of textures. Which one are you using? Thank you so much for asking that. So when you buy tofu at the store, you can get silken tofu, which is really, really soft, almost kind of liquidy. That is great for certain applications like smoothies do well with silken tofu. And then you can get firm tofu, you can get extra firm tofu. There's kind of a spectrum of firmness. I'm using extra firm tofu. Because we baked this and we were going for something a little crispier, I would recommend getting the firmest you can find at the store. Firm is great, extra firm is even better. So those different textures, like I mentioned, have different applications for different styles of cooking, but the firmest you can get for this will be the best choice for this recipe. Thank you so much for asking that. All right, make sure I got this other one here. Okay, and we typically get some questions regarding tofu and health because tofu, again, is a food that not everyone's used to. In the early 2000s, there was a lot of information and kind of rumors spreading about how tofu might cause certain things or lead to certain things. Namely, the health things that were mentioned were there was concern over how tofu may cause feminizing effects in men or how it may lead to breast cancer in women. This information was not backed by science or research. As it turns out, as research has been done, in fact, the opposite is true in many cases. So for women, girls, as they are growing up who have soy products, not just tofu, but soy in general, as part of a balanced diet, may actually be at a reduced risk for breast cancer as they age. Women who are already adults and eat soy products as part of a balanced diet are not at an increased risk for breast cancer. In fact, tofu and other soy protein options or other plant-based protein options can be great for your health if you are replacing some less healthy protein options with it. A lot of other protein options, like some animal protein options, depending on how we cook them, might be higher in cholesterol or saturated fat, where the plant-based options tend to give you the protein and a lot of other nice nutrients. So if you are someone who enjoys those animal proteins, I of course encourage you to eat things that are grilled and baked instead of fried. Choosing those leaner meats like turkey and chicken are great options, or doing lean beef. And of course, you can work in some plant-based options from time to time to add some diversity and some extra nutrition to your diet. So I always like to cover that because tofu got a bad reputation in the early 2000s, but the research that's come out has not really backed any of that information up, and in fact has shown numerous health benefits. So having soy a couple times a week can be pretty good for your health. All right. And I think that covers all the questions I see right now. So again, thank you everyone for attending today. We're going to be sending out an email that will include a link to a short survey where you can let us know what you thought of today's demonstration and even give us ideas and feedback for future ones. That email will also include a copy of the recipe and a link to the recording. When you fill out that survey, it really helps us out as we are constantly working to improve and deliver content that makes you happy and gets you excited about your health. So let us know what you think. Additionally, we offer a wide variety of programs through EDWS at GSU. Tomorrow, we're going to be doing a guided meditation and yoga session online. So if you're interested in either of those, that starts at 12. Meditation goes from 12 to 12:30, and then yoga will go from 12:30 to 1:30. So it's a great opportunity to get in a little activity, a little mindfulness before the weekend starts. If you're interested in getting emails about our events, you can email us at edws@gsu.edu, and we'll get you on our mailing list so you never miss a beat. We've got all sorts of programs from stretch breaks and virtual workouts, cooking demonstrations, meditation. We've got support groups, all sorts of different things. So thank you again, everyone, so much for attending, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.